It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined today by Judith Selvidge. We met because her brother Ross is a member of the Board of Trustees of the Pasadena Community College District. And when I learned about Judith and what a trailblazer she was, I wanted to bring her on to the program. She recently wrote a book, and it's called I Didn't Know They Had Girls at MIT. And boy, is that an understatement when you entered MIT in 1960. Give us a sense, Judith Selvidge, of how few women were at this institution.
At MIT at that time, the ratio was 50-1 men to women. So it meant that almost all my classes, I was the only woman taking the class.
Clearly.
Yes.
So let's back up and talk about how did a woman around 20-ish years old wind up at MIT in 1960?
Well, I started out, first of all, to say how I happened to get interested in mathematics and science,
Which is
what I majored in there.
Yeah.
When I was in the 6th grade, I remember telling my mother, I don't like arithmetic, it's boring. And my mother said, well, when your cousin Sandra was that age,
Right.
she didn't like arithmetic either. But when she got to high school and took algebra, she loved it. And so this cousin was the oldest of the female cousins in our family and my role model. And so I knew immediately when I got to high school I was going to love algebra, which I did, and geometry, and then later calculus and number theory and
It's interesting you mentioned that because I've said on this program before, when I was younger, I was pegged as a math genius. And all the way up through pre-algebra, I was just ripping it apart in math. The minute I hit advanced math, I fell apart. And I've heard that is not uncommon, that the skills for more basic math are one set. The skills for more advanced math are another.
It's more abstract.
Right, and I just didn't have that skill set.
Yeah.
But in 1960, and it pains me to say this, many folks felt that girls could never have that skill set. I mean, the fact that you could have a skill set of advanced mathematics was ludicrous. It was blasphemous.
Yeah, well, I like doing things that were difficult and challenging, and problem solving, so that all plays into math.
So how did you wind up going to MIT? Again, not a path for many women.
It was not something that I planned at all. I went first to Mills College and then to the University of Geneva in Switzerland.
Oh my.
And I was taking everything in those days. I wanted to keep my options open. So I took mathematics and literature and
French and German,
and physics and art and astronomy and so on. But then in the middle of that year in Switzerland, I decided I wanted to specialize in sciences, particularly math. And so I applied to MIT. I thought of it, which I hadn't thought before, but my father had been an MIT alum. So I knew of the school.
Sure.
And so I sent in an application and I was accepted.
Did you recognize at the time how rare it was for a woman to go to MIT?
Well, one of the tip-offs was the catalog, which was about this thick, 300 pages, had only one picture of a woman in it.
What's interesting is MIT actually had admitted women almost, I guess it was about a century before, or almost a century before. So it's not as if they weren't admitting women, but it was just so few were being admitted.
They didn't have accommodation. That was one of the excuses.
So where did you live when you went to MIT?
I lived in an apartment building across the street from the institute where they had dedicated a wing to upper class women because I entered as a junior.
Sure. So how was it for you during those years? Again, you were just you, but how was that being in a classroom with no other women?
Yeah, well, it was not hostile at all.
Okay, that's good to hear.
And of course, you had all the dates you wanted. That
was nice. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
And sometimes I think that it was partly because the MIT student, typically male and female, are less socially advanced at that time than in some of the other colleges.
Some of us, what a stereotype, but fair enough.
Right. So they didn't know there was a war going on between the sexes.
Fair enough, fair enough.
They were quite nice.
But when you first got there, was it a bit unnerving?
When I first got there, one of the phrases I use in my diary is I felt like a butterfly coming in and landing on an anthill.
Really?
It was different.
And then as you kind of marched through the process, talk to us about that.
Yeah. Well, the first semester was very traumatic.
Was it
not
traumatic?
It was stressful, let's say. And I think this is common for many students who go to MIT because about the time I was there, they did a survey of incoming freshmen where they ask, do you expect to be in the upper half of your class,
Right.
upper 50%, and 95% said yes.
Right, that can't happen.
And they weren't thinking,
Right.
upper, they think, what do you mean, upper 10%, upper
Right.
5%, that's
Right.
me, I've always been up there.
Right,
kind of
right.
thing. So that makes it difficult. You work hard, and you still can get bad grades.
Sure.
My parents sent me a letter in December saying, we're sending you a ticket to come home for Christmas because you've been away 18 months.
Okay, because you've been in Switzerland.
Right, it's expensive, but we want you to do that, which I did, but I felt like saying when I got the letter, don't bother having me come home at Christmas, I'll be flunking out in January.
But
But I didn't.
and so as you march through,
As you go through, it becomes
how was it for
easier and
you?
easier. It was great.
Now, was it harder that first semester because of your gender, or?
No, just because of the work. And in fact, it was easier for me because of my age, being 20 instead of coming in as a 17-year-old.
I understand.
Yeah.
So you graduate,
I graduated.
and I presume that in the early 1960s, it was not that easy for a woman to be hired in a, we'll call it a STEM field.
Yes.
Is that a fair
Right,
statement?
Right. Well, and between my first 2 years, I did not get any job offers for the summer.
And most of your colleagues did.
Yeah, oh yes, the guys got them.
The guys got the summer internships that led to an offer.
Exactly. But in my senior year, and my mother helped again on this, she had run into a young woman who told her about a new area opening up. It was a profession called computer programming.
What's that?
Which paid well and,
Right.
was very interesting. So I checked the MIT catalog, and there are 3 computer classes. I took one.
What were the, I mean, the computers were as large as
Right.
this room back then,
Oh
I
yes,
presume.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so is that the path that
That's
got
how
you on your
that's what
first
got
job?
me my first job, and then going forward.
So as you look back, it's now over 50 years. What do you, how do you look back at those days, and what have you seen over the last 50 years in terms of women advancing in STEM?
Well, obviously huge increases in the number of women. Still some reluctance among young girls and young women to go into the field.
I think
Kind of
that's
wondering about
accurate.
it, yeah.
I
And-
do. I have 2 daughters. The viewers
Right,
know that well,
right.
and 12 and 10. So they're still in their infancy, if you know what I'm saying, in terms of their
Right.
views of profession. But it's still, I do still feel as if there's societal barriers. Why? What is it?
Well, when I was there, when I was at MIT, women didn't think about careers anyway.
Right.
So and that was a luxury. You could, men had to take certain things. They had to take accounting or something they could make money with, and women didn't. But now I think partly it's just what people are expecting of them and what people tell them they can do.
So
And they may not realize what fun
right.
math is.
So what do you hope your readers will take away from what we're calling the MIT diary?
Right,
Are you looking for them to be inspired? Are you looking for them to be concerned? What are you hoping they'll feel?
Well, I think some young people will be inspired. That would be very good. I also wrote it, though, to be entertaining. And the people who read it say it is funny and they like reading it.
So what did you get out of the process?
The process of
of,
MIT
of
or
writing?
of
Because
my
I have
MIT
to
diary.
think, yeah.
I started it because I ran into a classmate who said, what do you remember most from MIT? And I said, I remember every night toiling away on problem sets.
Right.
And he said, studying, you went out every night.
That's what you recall.
That's what he said. He was a platonic friend.
I was
He
going to
said,
say.
Right, yeah, you went out every night. So then, which I said, well, that's not true, but maybe I should just review those days and figure out what the balance was.
And?
And the balance was more studying than going out, but having that many friends, platonic and otherwise
Right.
male friends, was delightful.
So as you look forward to the next chapter in your life, which I'm sure will be long, what do you see next?
Well, I might write a sequel because I went to 2 more men's colleges.
You did?
Right.
Where'd you go?
I did a graduate degree at the Imperial College in Science and Technology in London.
Okay.
I worked in computers after
Right.
for the 10 years after MIT. I worked in computers, then went to Imperial College. Then I worked at the Harvard Computer Center for a few years, and then I went to the Harvard Business School.
You're amazing. Her name is Judith Selvidge. She is the author of I Didn't Know They Had Girls at MIT, the MIT Diary. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.